Hello, everyone. You're not seeing double or triple, actually, seeing triple, actually. As I stated before on my call time Instagram, which you should be all be following, I mentioned that there'd be a special co host or a third co host going forward. Say hello, everyone, to Darren J. DeF.
Hello, everyone.
You've probably seen him before. He actually worked, well, not worked, but he was actually part of the Call Time family before with Yoko and his team with Resistance Pictures. So obviously he's a familiar face. If anything, I do like working together with familiar faces. So it's like obviously it's like one of those type of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, going forward, I'm not sure how long he wants to be the third co-host, but so I said, "Hey, you want to be a third co-host?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Being very nice. Also, it's nice to have more people on the show. Aside from me and Hayden.
hmm
So yeah. As we always do at the start of the top of the show, I kind of like go into say how our weeks were. So, uh, Darren, since you're the new co-host, how was your week?
well, first I want to say hi, everyone. It's good to be back. Feels nice to be a host or co-host. And they'll see how I do. Maybe they'll have me back on. And what's the question? How am I doing?
Yes.
I'm doing all right. The week has been it's what Tuesday. The
Yeah.
week has been off to a decent start. I'm prepping for a lot of things coming up, so a lot of projects to be done and in the works, and additional um, organization that has to be done for the business I'm trying to implement. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's doing good. But I'm glad I got time for this though.
Oh yeah, honestly, it's a very fun type of show to do because one, uh, it's obviously a little hard to do a show like this, especially just to talk about, hey,
Mhm.
uh, what exactly has happened in film or TV or what have you over the past week, because when a week has already gone by,
Mhm.
it's hard to say, what has happened when more news, breaks over the course of 24 hours. Like when we were doing the show last week, uh, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case kind of like ended. So it was like that was a big moment of like that was like literally the big news of the
Yeah.
day. So it was like
Like
obviously,
literally as soon as that they did that verdict, we then went right into recording the
Yeah.
episode.
because we kind of knew it was like okay, obviously, if they were going to do that today, I'm like okay, that's obviously something that's going to be the big news of the day, and we're kind of like we can't really do much.
Yeah.
But and but I will say this because of them, it actually allowed me to break a week into our first big story. Because originally I was going to open up last week with this story. Tom Cruise has exceeded box office records with Top Gun Maverick, I believe, grossing over $180 million already at domestic box office.
That's very impressive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, his box office record was with War of the Worlds back in 2005. Him and Spielberg. Uh, that's like essentially a cinematic tag team or a cinematic dream tag team, right? And that only grossed 64 million or so. Now, I figured over the years, one of the Mission Impossibles probably already became like his top domestic opening weekend gross. I was like, and I would think, maybe Mission Impossible Fallout because the way
Yeah.
it was going into, like the amount of hype that was going into that movie. Specifically, not only because of Henry Cavill and kind of like the whole mustache memes because of because it was being filmed at the same time as Justice League, but because of the action, the direction from it. So and surprisingly, no, it's like War of the Worlds was essentially his top grossing film until like at least opening weekend wise.
hmm
Like when you go into top grossing film, it's probably going to be like one of the Mission Impossibles.
Yeah.
You would
And
think, yeah.
yeah,
And the new one
but
looks great.
Oh, it does really.
Yeah.
But opening weekend wise, that's always hard to do, especially if you're a a blockbuster actor like Tom Cruise and whatnot.
Yeah.
But to get like last week when it had Memorial Day, right? Because again, Memorial Day, it's a holiday weekend. So obviously, with the 4-day weekend, or 5 days, if it went straight into like maybe a Wednesday thing, but I believe it started previews on Thursday night or Thursday, and it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Oh yeah, that is Friday. I mean that is a 5-day work week. I mean Friday, that is 5 days.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Math is not my strongest suit.
That's why we're actors.
Yes. But yeah, I'm like, when I read about that, I'm like, wow, there must be something special about Top Gun Maverick that I don't know about. And going by just the fan reactions and just like people who watch the film and just go, wow, this is like one of the greatest sequels, ever to be put on film. People have said it's like, and the same director who did this also did Tron Legacy, and that like the people have actually compared it to like almost similar to that, whereas like it's essentially like something that Tron Legacy wanted to be, like that sort of like legacy sequel has. Now, granted, I haven't seen the movie because again, I've had work. Hayden has said that
he's seen it, right? No one has seen it here.
No.
Oh wow.
Have you seen it?
I haven't. No, I wanted to see it. I think a few days ago, but I had other plans. So I was like, yeah. But I do want to see it though. Yeah.
But yeah, there is like there has to be something special when a legacy sequel opens at the box office, not only exceeding expectations, right, but surpassing them too. Because I think when it came out on its weekend for initial release weekend, I think it was like it was estimated to get like maybe $70 or $80 million opening weekend, right? Mm-hmm. And then you wake up to it was like it grossed over 122 million or something like that, right?
Yeah, I believe it's 180 the first week, which is like $100 million more than expected. I think. Let me just double check that.
Yeah. And when you're doing a movie like this, right, especially a movie that is essentially 35 years removed from the original movie, which, goes without saying how old I am. Because I'm like, Top Gun actually came out on the week of my birth. Either the week after my birthday or the week of my birthday. So yeah, that really does show you that 36 years later, there is just something special about people. I mean, there is just something special about watching people fly airplanes and just fly airplanes.
Yeah, airplanes are cool.
And also it's like it had some tough competition because there's still that Doctor Strange movie that's been out. Yeah. And because Marvel movies do have a long, shelf life when they're in theaters. So, that's still going to that would have been guaranteed to take seats away. And also Jurassic Park, Dominion.
Oh yeah, which is opening this weekend actually.
Yeah.
So
it's like you got both of these on both sides of Top Gun Maverick, and here it is just literally soaring high.
Yeah, knocking it out.
Like literally breaking what was it? Breaking Mach speed or breaking the
sound barrier.
The sound barrier. I was like, what is that word I'm hearing for? The sound barrier. Okay, yeah, basically, yeah. And compared to say, and you bring up a good point with Jurassic Park Dominion, that's essentially going to be a movie that is close to 30, no, not 30 years, 20 years, was it? Again, this is why we're actors, folks.
Mm-hmm. Like, are you talking about since the first movie?
Yes, which is 93. So 93, that's 20 years, right?
That's gonna be
No, I think it's closer to 30.
30 years. 30 years. Yeah.
But Jurassic Park, which, if you count the book, then it is obviously a 30-year-old property, right? A 30-year-old property novel franchise, essentially. And with this new movie coming out, Dominion, it's going to be posing the question, will the dinosaurs essentially take out the fighter jets? That's always been a hilarious kind of like idea of dinosaurs taking out fighter jets, or that whole meme of a dinosaur in a fighter jet. So, but it is possible that actually could happen over the weekend, where it's just like Jurassic Park overtakes Maverick because people love dinosaurs more so than
jets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
And also, it's like you got Chris Pratt and I'm blanking on her name.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Bryce Dallas Howard. Yeah.
Bryce Dallas Howard. For some reason, I want to say Jessica Chastain. I'm like, no, that's not right.
No.
Although those two could play sisters, and I would easily believe it.
Yeah.
But then also you have like the original cast from the very first movie making a return as well.
Yeah, and not only that, they're essentially trying to wrap up 30 years worth of story in one movie, and which is hard to do, especially if it's like a trilogy, and the end of a trilogy that not only relates to a new trilogy, but also just essentially the film that relates to the end of a franchise. So that's even more harder to do. Is like, in a way, it's sort of like watching the Star Wars movies and then watching up to episode 6, and then saying, okay, that's like the end of the franchise. There's like literally no more movies. Obviously, this is before the sequel trilogy, obviously, and then you watch the sequel trilogy, right? And it's like the same problem, whereas it's like you have all these movies, right? And don't worry, I have a good way. I have a good reason why I'm bringing this up is that I just don't want to have to see Jurassic Park Dominion fall under the same properties that some trilogies have. Whereas, like in this last trilogy, right, in this last movie, they build up essentially all these characters, right, and then all these storylines, and it's like, will these storylines pay off? And in the end, I bring up the sequel trilogies because the sequel trilogy is very suggestive of just having a very bad payoff for a lot of these, with Star Wars in general.
Yeah.
And Jurassic Park has always been a franchise that is very near and dear to my heart, because that was also one of the movies I saw as a kid growing up. Of course, growing up as a kid, I'm like, of course people grow up. I should just say, as a kid, that was one of the first movies that really that made an impression to me as a kid, especially growing up as a person who just loves movies. And I think it's also the fact that I also read the 2 novels, Jurassic Park and The Lost World, was like almost in a span of a month, or in the span of a couple of weeks, because it was like the moment you just read this thing, it's like it's hard to really put down, because Michael Crichton's way of like talking about stuff, it's like really hard to put down, because once he has like a traction of like, once he just starts talking, it's like, this really doesn't make any sense. But then as you're just reading along, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Is it just those 2 books?
Yeah, it's basically those 2 books.
Okay.
It's like so weirdly different compared to the movies, where it's just like in the books, it's more like a science fiction horror thing, because it's much more gorier depiction of a dinosaur, obviously, because obviously these movies are aiming for PG-13 ratings.
Mm-hmm.
This was like rated R, but like, yeah, you probably see a severed foot, something over. You probably see someone eating a severed foot or something like that, or
it's like someone gets like chomped in half, and then it's just their legs, and then like remnants of like intestines or whatever is just hanging with it.
And more blood, and in the first movie you just have more Samuel L. Jackson just saying more mother effers. So
yeah, I mean, it did have some. It's like back when that movie came out, it had some of its some gory elements that
but
probably not implemented today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it was just more like suggested, like that something happened.
Yeah.
But back to my original point, where it's just like with Top Gun Maverick and now Jurassic Park Dominion, Top Gun Maverick has the decency, to say, hey, there wasn't no Top Gun, aside from maybe a couple of games, right? That wasn't no Top Gun sequels, right? There wasn't no, Top Gun 2 or Top Gun, 33 and a half or something like that.
Well, don't give them ideas.
Yes.
They got the shop, though. The leather jacket shop.
Okay, that is true. But compared to like Jurassic Park, where it has been a franchise-heavy movie series, and video games, I should say, too. How, and especially since this is going to be the last film of theirs for a while, or maybe just the last film of
like
this
5 years, maybe.
5 years, and
then when they come back in their robots with dinosaur essentially like clothing.
Or maybe they'll just reboot it.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, the next logical step is to cross over with Westworld, because Michael Crichton also has done Westworld, and not many people seem to realize that. Oh, Westworld, dinosaurs. Just give me Jeff Goldblum just yelling at a random robot. I'm good.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, I think they tried it with Transformers too, but it'd be nice to see it done right.
But yeah, you have this franchise, right, like Jurassic Park, which is 30 years old, compared to say, and it has 6 movies going now. Compared to say Top Gun, which only had the 1 movie, and now it is sequel to being more successful. It just raises the question, will there be more movies in the future that takes the ideology of just saying, hey, this is an old property, this has no sequels, it's like, in a way, it's sort of like what they do when we were Cobra Kai, right? You take a property like the Cobra Kid. My mind is a little mixed up tonight. I'm not drunk, okay?
While you're drinking whatever it is you're drinking.
Yeah.
It's just my Coke. No, the Karate Kid, right? The Karate Kid trilogy or quadrilogy, or if you want to really add the reboot of the Karate Kid, it basically.
I like that one.
It basically had. By I say it, I mean Cobra Kai. Basically took the ideology from the first Karate Kid, right, and just made it the point of interest of the whole show. And then over the course of the seasons, they just start adding characters or reintroducing characters from the older previous movies and stuff, so forth and so on, into the show. Yeah. With a movie series, though, it is more harder to do so because I think it's because of just like maybe. I want to say maybe contracts or just time management or something like that, especially if you got to do a movie compared to, say, like a TV show, whereas it's like, hey, we want you for an episode of, like, say, of this TV show that is a spin-off of this property that you were in, like, maybe 10 years ago. I'm like, okay, I could just easily do an episode.
Well, I think the biggest difference to keep in mind, too, is, like, with TV shows, that is more centered around, like, long-form character development. Yeah. And then with movies, you are going to be making a lot of things that are generally going to be more spectacle-esque.
Yeah.
Especially when we're comparing it to, say, like, Top Gun Maverick and Jurassic World Dominion.
Yeah, I think those two properties are like I can't imagine them being a show. Like I can't imagine Jurassic Park or Jurassic World being a show without it being like really expensive or like another spectacle with not any character development, and who would show up for that really?
I mean, they do the same with Jurassic Park with Camp Cretaceous on Netflix. It's a cartoon, and that's been like going around for like maybe 4 seasons now, 5 seasons. So it's been doing successful.
You said a cartoon, like a 2D? Is it animated or?
Yeah, it's computer graphics. It's a computer animated show. Like
what's it called?
Camp Cretaceous, I believe.
Okay.
Because the Cretaceous period, and obviously.
Oh, right. And that's a Jurassic World spin-off? Jurassic.
Yes, actually, it's supposed to take place on the same island as the Jurassic World, and towards, I believe, maybe either the second season or I want to say either the start of the second season or the end of the second season. It sort of like.
Do we mean movie?
Yeah. No.
Just saying second season. I was like, wait, hold on now.
I'm talking about the show, the Netflix show. Yeah.
I'm talking about the show.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying but I thought you were comparing it to the movies. Like saying when it went in that timeline, this show is taking place.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. In the time frame of the show, there we go. Towards the either at the start of the second season or towards the end of the second season, the time frame of the show converges into the time frame of the first Jurassic World. So as you're watching Jurassic World, like just know at the end of it, like somewhere on this island, the adventures of the Camp Cretaceous is happening as well.
Okay, I mean, I think that's a pretty good idea, I guess, for a show of Jurassic Park. I don't know if I should be saying Jurassic World or Park, in general, but in the Jurassic cinematic universe, it's interesting that you did say the show is animated, because I don't think they could do it in live action either, because again, that would take a lot. Yeah. So if they do have a show, it would be animated, which makes sense.
And they did do a live action short not too long ago, like maybe 2 years ago. It was to set up essentially Jurassic Park Dominion, because the movie was supposed to come out in 2020, and then.
Oh yeah, that was pretty much a movie, like a short movie.
Yeah, and from what they heard, it was like, oh, the movie, that short movie actually was, surprisingly kind of well made in terms of the like Jurassic camp.
It was a nice take. I remember seeing that. I was like, oh wow, this is unique in its own way, because it's like a different cast of people, and like it shows this like survivor element of everything, and it's like a wonder, and then like you don't know who's gonna make it out, and I like that, because you don't know who anyone is, and so it does build a better story in those like short minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, it really, at the end of the day, it really just dawns into, it really just gets to that question I had before. Or concern I had before, is like, with a big franchise like this or a big film series like this, I just don't want to have the same problems where it's just like, okay, we're 6 movies deep, and we're trying to tie up loose ends, but also we're trying to tie up loose ends in this new trilogy of ours. Especially, how it's like, not only are they trying to tie up the loose ends in the first trilogy, right? And now they also got to try and tie up loose ends in this new trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, so that's my only concern really going forward, is like, will there be any loose ends? It's like, okay, but what about this character or this character? It's like, I guess they don't want to care. I just don't want. I guess they didn't have time to focus on this character.
Yeah. I mean, I think they'll. Well, I guess we have to find out and see. Honestly, I'm actually seeing it Friday. I got my tickets to see it Friday, so I'll be one of the first to let you know.
I'll try and see it over the weekend too, but I got work.
Oh yeah.
So it's gotta be a little hard to do that.
I will say this, like, it's funny we were saying it's like any loose ends when you're tied up, and it's like I feel like they like have those loose ends, so then they can make another movie and then another movie.
So I
feel like, and this is what I say, like, good stories know when to end, and bad stories just keep going and going, because studios are like, hey, we can churn out some money from this. People are gonna go see it regardless. Let's see how far we ride this train. So that's something that definitely is a little concerning, I guess, with this Jurassic Park thing, especially when the setup of the story is, hey, here's all the dinosaurs. They're everywhere. They're invading, and we're just humans. What can we do to really stop this?
Yeah.
So there's that aspect, and it's like I feel like there's definitely going to be some loose end that I feel like is going to be there on purpose for the next movie. And to tie this back to the very original topic of Top Gun Maverick.
Yes.
Whoever executives might possibly, maybe, faintly watching this, don't go too far with making Top Gun movies.
Yes.
Just make a few good ones, and ride that high.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, I like how this whole notion of we start talking about Top Gun, Maverick, and then basically how essentially it broke Tom Cruise's records and just basically evolved into pun evolved into Jurassic World and Dominion, because at the end of the day, these two are legacy sequels, right? And this the strength of Top Gun is that Top Gun Maverick really has the strength of there hasn't been any media pertaining to other movies that have they done. Again, as I said, this is the first sequel that they've done in like over 35 years, compared to Jurassic Park Dominion, where they have done nothing but sequels over the past, say, what was it, 2015, for the past 8 years or so. Yeah, I believe so, give or take.
Yeah.
And and when, especially since the last movie before that was in 2001, and they had nothing but some what was it? Yeah, some arcade games that was basically licensed to the Jurassic Park name. So so basically, Jurassic World has the distinction to basically being part of a legacy sequel that has been nothing but like what Hayden was just saying just before, which was essentially they're just churning out movie after movie after movie because these movies have been so successful. But I'm also bringing up the point where it's like, as a legacy sequel, they're trying to also they're also trying to figure out a narrative that basically says, hey, we're basically in the same universe. We should at least acknowledge that.
Right. Okay. The one thing about what's interesting about the Top Gun thing is like it is like such a. Oh, by the way, the box office is over 160 million, not 180, or maybe it could have been still, but the number I just got was 160.
Oh.
And I guess what's amazing about it is that like it did interest so many people, and so many things that had in its favor, like it being Memorial Day, like this is a U.S. military kind of day.
Yeah.
And it having Tom Cruise, everyone loves Tom Cruise. I'm sure people just thought it was another Mission Impossible movie, if anything.
I mean, looking at the way they like filmed those like jet scenes when you're sitting inside and just like.
Yeah, and I think the filmmaking that part is what would draw me, but I didn't think it would draw any other audience because they did film a lot of it practically in real time. So that's something I definitely want to see on like an IMAX screen or a big screen in general. I just didn't know what the story was. I think that was the thing that kept me from going into it. And to go back to Jurassic, the new Jurassic World movie coming out, I don't know what the story is on that either. And maybe that's a good thing, because then maybe I might enjoy it more, because I just know dinosaurs are there and there's stuff going on, hijinks ensue. And
that's the gist of a Jurassic Park movie. Humans are there, dinosaurs are there, wacky hijinks ensue.
Yeah.
Compared to Top Gun, where it's just like Tom Cruise is there in a fighter jet. He's breaking the law as a fighter pilot. Wacky hijinks ensue.
Yeah, and things like I understand the story more of Top Gun than I do Jurassic World. Just because like he's coming back after a long time because he's being recommended for this particular training mission or something like that, because he's the only one that can do it, and that makes sense. Of course, Tom Cruise is the only one that can do it. And I mean it's a nice I guess like war movie, or like a nice like patriotic movie, for like for all of us. So, and I mean, who doesn't want to fly a nice fast jet in like or feel like they are.
And speaking of patriotic tendencies, Resident Evil 4 is being remastered. I know that is a weird segue, but
hell of a segue.
But bear with me, folks. Here,
I get it.
If you ever played Resident Evil 4, you know how patriotic it is with one of the characters of Jack Chrysler. Is it Chrysler? Yeah, Jack Chrysler. He is like he is basically the over American type of character who is basically essentially, if you're watching like one of those type of movies that from the 80s where it has to deal with that the deflector the evil deflecting character that happens to be the same nationality as the main character. That's basically the character of Jack Chrysler, but he's more like gung ho. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. But looking at like when I heard that they were remaking that. Okay, first off, I'm sorry. I don't even know how that segue really came into the thing.
It was good. You're going good so far. I liked it.
Okay. And you know, you do play I don't remember which character it was because I don't remember it as well off the top of my head, but I do remember this. You do have to protect the president's daughter, and what is more patriotic than protecting the president's daughter?
There we go.
Very true.
So yes, and that's actually the whole point of that game is that the president's daughter is missing. He has to send his one good secret agent, or the one secret agent that happens to know something in order about saving people. So he obviously picks Leon, as opposed to maybe Chris Renfield, who basically punches rocks. We joke about punching rock Chris, but still. You do it once in the game, and people will automatically believe that's just like one of your character traits. But Resident Evil 4 Remastered, I believe, is going to be the official title, or just Resident Evil 4, obviously, for convenience sake.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they'll probably put remastered because I think they did that for the other ones too.
Although when they do with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4, when they got remastered, they kind of like put the emphasis on the RE. So it'd be like Resident Evil 2, but the RE will be more stylized. So I think that's the same thing with Resident Evil 4, where it'd be like Resident Evil 4, but the RE is more stylized, saying it's like, okay, it's remastered.
Yeah.
But obviously it was like I think it was like maybe a minute and a half of a trail of just basically the ambulance of just being in the village again. Even though in the Resident Evil franchise, game-wise, they literally had a video game called Village that was sort of like a throwback to the Resident Evil 4. So,
right.
So it's basically saying, hey, we kind of figured we know that you like playing in a village, so why not, remaster the game where the village is the main part of the thing? But from a video gamer standpoint, I love the fact that they are remaking Resident Evil 4 or remastering Resident Evil 4, because again, that was the one that really put me into the Resident Evil like games. Like I couldn't play Resident Evil 2 or the first Resident Evil because obviously it's rated M and all that stuff, and 2, rated M games on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, were really hard to come by for some reason.
Yeah, it really put it on the map. I remember when it like came out like that. It was like I think for GameCube only.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was like, I don't have a GameCube. I have a PlayStation, and like had to like go to my cousins to play it. But like I remember how popular it was that like I was like, oh, there's a fourth one. I didn't know there was others. I was like, wow.
Yeah, like the only like that was like my first like way of hearing about the Resident Evil series through the fourth game.
Yeah, and I think the fourth game had, and again, it's sort of like the same thing where we were talking about the same notion of Top Gun, Jurassic World, where it's just like there's this nostalgia for Resident Evil, specifically since the first two remastered, Resident Evil 2 and 3, were superior. Like they were like really, really received well. Well, I don't remember if 3 was received well. I remember it being like received well, but it wasn't like the big hit that they wanted it to be, because Resident Evil 2 was like much more the bigger hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was, I think there was more people clamoring on to do Resident Evil 4 compared to say, hey, when's the next Resident Evil game? Or, when are you going to do, or when's the next Resident Evil movie, or
No, they just
no
had
one
one in
wants a Resident
November.
Evil movie.
They just had one in November, and they're having a show coming out, I think, in a few months on Netflix.
yeah, which is amazing to know. Is like how it's like, oh, Capcom, will gladly remaster Resident Evil or do that in it, but or give a new movie to give them a new movie, but compared to say Castlevania has yet to have a new game like in like almost 15 years. Like the last the last time they had a new game for Castlevania was like maybe 2010, I think, or 2008.
I mean, they got the Netflix show. I mean, it's animated, but they got the Netflix show,
which is a highly underrated show.
Yeah.
Go and watch it.
Yeah,
but
not to knock the animation either, but like, how come they can't make a live action version either?
I mean, there are fights in that show that actually makes you go, okay, I can understand why this was animated.
Oh yeah, okay. I haven't seen the show yet. I have to see it myself.
Oh man, you are missing out.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
It's why Dragon Ball Z only works as an animated show and not as a live action movie.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, of course.
But back to Resident Evil and Resident Evil 4 specifically, I think there were more people clamoring on Resident Evil 4 because of not only the nostalgia, but because of it holding a lot of favoritism in people's when they think of Resident Evil, it's like, oh, it is like Resident Evil, like favorite game. They're like, oh, Resident Evil 2, 3, 4, 5, and then people are like, what about the original games and stuff like that? It's like when they think of games, it's like obviously they would probably put like Resident Evil 4 in like that top, like one of the top three spaces. So, and for the past several years, there have been a lot of properties, video game wise, that have been getting remastered and doing supremely well. Like Mafia, the definitive edition, looks and runs greatly in terms of compared to what it was on the PS2. And the PS2 was just like, hey, it's a PS2. You get what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And there were certain missions that were just like supremely hard, and here in the definitive edition is like, oh, there are like those hard missions are slightly less harder, but they're still challenging. But this they made it less challenging. I mean, this less challenging for you.
It's just slightly forgiving.
Yeah,
like that's one thing I've heard about like most remakes. Is that it's just like it's not as challenging as the original. They kind of hold your hand more unless you put it on that difficulty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are.
But actually, I think also too, like the reason why they were even so difficult in the first place was just simply because of like limitations with the technology at the time too.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, and compare that to say with a game, and again, Resident Evil 4 came out in 2005, I think, or in essentially the early to mid 2000s, right? And that was essentially like the peak boom of video gaming, especially for like rated M games and stuff like that too. Especially going forward with what Resident Evil was around the time, especially since that game really did kind of like put the emphasis on not being a survival horror game and just becoming a action-oriented horror game. It's like, okay, there's still elements of survival horror. Hey, oh, hey, a green herb. Oh, hey, a yellow herb. Ooh, a red herb. Okay, let's mix them together. Okay, I have a healing potion.
Poison ivy.
Compared to this, like, hey, this zombie just gave me ammo. Okay, ammo isn't scarcity. Or this zombie just gave me coins. Hey, I have coins. I have coins to buy stuff now.
Yeah, they are more.
Guess I'm in the Midwest.
Yeah, it does seem to be a bit more like action adventure than horror. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why 4 and 5 are more favored in terms of their like it is more action oriented compared to say horror oriented, horror like. And people love the survival horror aspects of the game. It's just that it is hard to do a survival horror game and just like, hey, I'm running low on supplies. And there's this zombie dog that's right in the hall, and I only have like 2 bullets left and a knife that will probably break after like 1 hit. I have to be very quick about this compared to say Resident Evil 4, where it's like, okay, I have like 2 clips of ammo, I have a healing spray, I got a grenade. There was 2 zombie dogs outside. There's a guy with a chainsaw and a hockey mask. I'm good. Let's go. It's like, and down the hall there's a shotgun that is just calling my name.
Especially when you compare it to like Resident Evil 6, where it's like, oh, I'm out of bullets. That's okay. I'm Leon. I can suplex everything.
And then I think they finally figured out with that, whereas like when they were doing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, they were like, okay, we kind of went overboard with all the action-oriented stuff. So we just gotta go back to the old school Resident Evil. Hey, you know, if you're like, you could die in a couple of hits, or if you're playing on really hard, if one monster hits you, you're dead. It's like, but when it comes to the action-oriented stuff in that game, it still feels very horror-esque type of. It really does feel like more of a survivor horror game, even when there is like action-oriented like moments in that thing, where it's like there's a reason why the molded feel like not so out of place of a like a Lovecraft Lovecraft monster, but also like a Swamp Thing monster, like something Swamp Thing would just happen to be like, okay, there's these weird shrubs that that are essentially black mold or something like that, and people are being transformed into zombies. So I really hope that they take in not only the criticism that they had for these like past few games, but specifically, I do remember there were people like, okay, a lot of these games are like it's very short, and with Resident Evil 4, if memory serves, it was a very long game. It lasted like, you would think like, oh, okay, he finds Ashley, right? Nope, it's not over yet. They still have to get off the island. Okay, they're about to leave the castle they're trapped in. Nope, she gets captured again, or they lose each other again, or they go, they find their way off the island, and then they find out that the helicopter they need is on another island, so they get on a boat and use the boat to go into that island, and they find out more about this stuff, about the not only about the creatures, but also, oh hey, the people who were behind the Raccoon City bombing, or the virus in the Raccoon City, they were kind of like behind this too. So everything is always connected somehow.
It was like a wild goose chase.
But
find out, everything's just crappy.
Yeah, and but I just hope that with Resident Evil 4 and with the teaser trailer that they gave, it looks spectacular. I really hope that they saw the criticisms for Resident Evil 3 and said, okay, we can't really do a short game, because I think you could probably beat Resident Evil 6, like maybe, not Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 3 in like maybe 6 hours. Mm-hmm. Compared to like say Resident Evil 2, where it was like, because of the 2 characters and switching to Leon and then Claire, and having more of a funness of just saying, hey, there's 2 characters, so there's 2 distinct styles you want to play as, and compared to saying, okay, we're only playing as Jill Valentine most of the time, and then when you play as Carlos, it's a very action-oriented thing, but it only lasted so long, and then suddenly it's like, okay, we're back to playing Jill. And I really do hope that with this remastered, they do fix some of the problems that they had in the original Resident Evil 4 game. Because one of my friends, Dylan, shout out to Dylan, he mentioned how much of a pain it was to turn around in that game. Because you basically had to swing this little stick around just to essentially say, hey, I want to turn around, and just go like, you guys swing the joystick down and then hold A or hold X or something like that, just to swing around. Compared to like the new games where it's just like, okay, all I'm just doing is just using the other analog stick.
Do you think that's like like that would take away any of the suspense from it though, if it was if they're like making it again, we talked about it being like too easy sometimes. Do you think that would that was just an issue like that they didn't know they had in the game, where you couldn't turn around right away, or was that a purposeful thing you think they had to make the player, like really think about their moves?
I think it was probably limitations because obviously. Well, I think it is maybe a purposeful, yes.
I can't even do it either.
Yeah, a purposeful type of thing that they did, but at the same time, it may have been just because of limitations. Because again, the PS2 and the GameCube,
it was GameCube, yeah.
It was at the time the highest form of whatever technology that they had for video gaming, compared to say with the PS5 now, which is basically saying, hey, we got a 4K movie player in this thing, or whatever it is with the Xbox. I don't know how the Xbox One has it. So yeah.
Hayden, how do you feel about like what Bryan said about like fixing that issue or fixing any issues to make it more playable or easier?
Well, I think like they absolutely are going to, like, without a doubt, they're going to fix any of those issues for sure. Because it's like we were talking about before. It's like you play the first Mafia game and then you play the remastered version of that game, and it's like such a 9-day difference, not just like controls, but also just graphically, because they're using like modern game engines, which you can do so much more with than you could have back all those years ago. So yeah. I think this like this turning around issue thing that was probably there in the technical limitations with whatever engine they were using at that time, they're easily going to have that fixed, no problem. And also, I think this is probably why the third game was so short as it was, because I think even they realized, like, we just did the second game, it's fantastic, people loved it, but I don't think we're going to get a lot of, of our money back worth we try to remaster the whole third game. The fourth game, that's really where people are going to be wanting to see that remastered, because it was the best out of all of the ones that came before, because that is the one that really put the franchise on the map in such a big way. So I feel like that's where they were putting a lot more of their time and attention.
Okay, so do you think like games in general are just getting easier, especially when they remake them? Like, is it just to make them easier to play? I mean, to introduce a new audience, of course, but do you guys think that like when they make these, because they have these engines, are the engines just making everything just easier for everyone? Like taking away maybe a challenge for them, or is it just just like the way it is now?
I think it's a couple things. I think for one side it's accessibility, because a lot of these games are just not going to be able to play them because it requires a lot of that old tech that like people probably just don't have lying around and probably just can't find anywhere. So I feel there's probably that really going into it too. And I do think with those new engines, it does fix a lot of things that on the one hand probably were challenges because there was graphical limitations that ended up turning it into a challenge in the first place when it really wasn't in the intention to be a challenge. But I think because with these newer engines, with what we can do, it's like, yeah, we can have an easier mode, but also we do know players want challenge, so we do make those really ridiculously hard modes.
Right.
Just look at like, I think it was like Last of Us Part 2 that literally had like essentially an insta die mode, essentially.
Right.
So that's how insanely hard it was.
You do bring up a good point, Darren, where it's just like, I remember when the GTA trilogy was announced to be, they're remaking it. They're like, okay, maybe they got to be doing the same thing, the same graphics as the GTA, 5 or what have you. And then people are like, it's just they basically, it was basically an upgraded texture to how they originally was, and did not look at all great in some of the gameplay. But what they did do was that they did put some of the control semantics, control aesthetics from GTA 5 in these new games, where it's just like, previously if you wanted to say, hey, I have a nightstick and a submachine gun, but I really don't want to keep on switching over to these two weapons, and because I have to do all these certain moves in the GTA new trilogy, they basically used the thing where it's just like
the wheel, right?
Yeah, that little wheel thing, like the same thing you do in Red Dead, where it's just basically where time just slows down and it's like, hey, which weapon do you want to use? Your fist, a nightstick, what have you. And it's just basically they use the same, which I do appreciate more. Is just like, hey, they are breeding, they did put in some of the stuff that they used in previous GTA games in this new foundation, but they still gave it the sense that it's the same game, just basically stamped over with a facelift.
Right.
And that facelift wasn't like a good facelift. It was the facelift you get in the back of a van right behind the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, it was like, and people were so disappointed with that too, where it's just like, whereas like compared to say something like Mafia Definitive Edition or the Resident Evil 2 remake, where it was supremely well received compared to say, the GTA trilogy remastered or updated or whatever it was, complete edition or whatever it was called, and what was the other one? I forgot what. Oh, Resident Evil 3, the remastered one, where it's just like, oh, okay, it's like they, like, people knew that the Resident Evil 3 thing was like such a cash grab because Resident Evil 2 was so successful because of how it was, received. So people know that with Resident Evil 4, it's sort of like, okay, this game is going to be a very long game because, there's this like certain elements in that game that just would not be without Resident Evil. Like, I want to see that scene where, or that, I want to see that scene where Ashley is basically being transported in a night costume, okay? Mm-hmm. And Leon is dressed like a, not 70s gangster, or a 1920 gangster for some reason, okay? Because when I mentioned that because if you do play the remastered Resident Evil games, they do give you a choice to actually play the game as the original characters, like the original outfits, or like the original pixels. So you can actually play the Resident Evil 3 game as essentially like Jill 98, like literally as a PlayStation 1 pixel or something like that. So it's just kind of hilarious.
Yeah, they just imported it.
It's like I think it's like the same thing that they do with the Tomb Raider games as well, where it's just like they give you a costume where it's like, oh, it's Lara Croft from like the first game.
Yeah.
But there's also like maybe a code where you can play as Lara Croft as a pixel, like the polygon form. There we go.
Yeah.
I keep saying it's a pixel, but it's polygons, whatever that's called.
Yeah, shapes.
All right, and to wrap up today's episode, again, keeping in that form of nostalgia, Stranger Things has been in the news again because one, they recently just dropped their newest season. It's the first half or the first volume of their 8-episode, or was it 8 or 10 episodes? I think it's like 8 or 10, one or the other. But basically, the first half of their first volume of season 4. And because Stranger Things has been a juggernaut of a show, especially for Netflix, it's like whatever song happens to be on that show just happens to be essentially, it just returns back to like main stage. Main stage song. Like that, that has happened previously in some of the songs. Like because of the show, the Clash, the people are starting to listen to Clash. People start listening to others, other bands and whatnot because of that. But more specifically, the singer Kate Bush, her song "Running Up That Hill" basically exploded onto the top 10 charts because of the show.
Yeah.
And it's basically a song from from 1985. So basically a 37-year-old song. Yeah, 37-year-old song. Basically now on the top 10 charts compared to say, whatever recent songs are out now. I don't, again, I'm not really a music person, so I only know music from like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So,
I mean, Uh, for you guys, for me, I would probably say it's not too surprising, especially when something very popular popularizes like a song, especially. It happens a lot in movies and even trailers. Like Queen will forever be like a trailer song for something. And like again, it goes back to the overarching theme of nostalgia for everyone, and so it just it just brings it all full circle with the popularization of old music, which I think some may argue is probably was better back then.
Yeah.
So like, which is why like they don't have anyone really making songs like that anymore for a modern show. And I guess with the theme of it being an '80s show from or like it's takes place most in the '80s, right?
Yeah, basically '80s or mid '80s. Basically mid '80s America.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. They would want to be authentic with a song from that era. And I mean, if they do season 5 and it takes place in the early 2000s, that's gonna be hilarious because it's like so many like experimental music at that time,
Yeah, essentially.
So.
And I think Netflix has this like notion if it's like you're watching a show on Netflix and it is like a nostalgia show, or a show, not even a show or a movie, where they have like a nostalgic song where it's like say. Like Fleetwood Mac singing
what, Dreams?
Yeah, like Dreams or the Chain or something like that. And people are like, "Oh, what is this song?" Like, and they would listen to the name of the credits, all that stuff, and then people would start watching listening more to this album or listening more to this artist thanks to this, popular movie or popular show.
Yeah.
Or popular episode of that time or what have you.
Yeah.
Or even a video game for that matter too.
Yeah. Like the Kingdom Hearts artist God, I can't butcher her name. Anybody know her name? The things the Simple and Clean and God, okay, hold on. But carry on. Hey, go ahead, guys. I'm gonna look this up real quick.
Yeah, I gotta say that is a perfect encapsulation of pretty much everything we've been talking about this episode, just nostalgia.
Yeah.
And how really it's like that it does seem to be like a big thing that's been like kind of coming so much back around in these last so many years. Where it's like everyone's just kind of like using nostalgia to like, reintroduce a newer audience to a lot of music, a lot of video games, movies, TV shows, characters from a time period that they might not have actively gone out to listen to or play or be able to watch.
Yeah. I think it's because people are trying to... I think it's because of what has been happening for the past several years, specifically going past, like, say, people always joke about everything has gone wrong since 2016, and I kind of believe them now. Going how everything has gone wrong since 2016.
That was the last great summer.
Yeah. And then summers became unbearable.
Yes, but there has been a nostalgia factor with I think people now because people have grown over. I mean, people grow old, and they do want to revisit their youth. And people who are now in their like 40s or 50s, and they watch a show like Stranger Things, and they go like, "Wow, I listened to these songs back as a teenager growing up," or again, why do I say growing up as a teenager? I said as a teenager, I listened to these songs. It's like an excellent example of this is that Netflix again is doing a sequel show to that 70s show called That 90s Show, and it's going to be following Eric and Donna's daughter living with her grandparents over the summer. And I'm definitely going to be like, okay, this is a 90s show, right? What songs are they going to be playing that goes, okay, yeah, I listened to that song when I was a kid. Or I listened to that band when I was in high school or junior high, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Which honestly has me so excited if they got Kerwin Smith, I believe his name is, back as Red Foreman, to hear this music and just be like, just so confused as like, what the hell are these kids listening to now?
Yeah, he's coming back in the show. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and the woman who plays his wife, I forgot her name too, but yeah, they're coming back.
Nice.
And people have actually joked about how essentially since that show went off 20 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
That time period of when they first started actually sums up to, it would be 20 years before them, like it was essentially 20 years. The 20 years before it was essentially 1970, like the late 1970s when they were taking place with the show.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to say now, where it's like, okay, when the show first premiered, it was the late 1990s. So now people who were around in the 1990s, like people who are in their like 30s going into their 40s, goes, okay, there is a time period where it's just like, I remember all this stuff now, and I want to revisit all that stuff. And I think that's the reason why shows like Stranger Things have that nostalgia factor like so locked in, where it's just like, even if you put a song like, say, like Achy Breaky Heart or something like that, people will go like, who's singing Achy Breaky Heart? And all these people from the the late 80s, early 90s who had to suffer through that song goes, oh my God, that is a song I haven't heard in years, and is making me go back into a frame of mind that I haven't heard in a while. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's like the same thing with what is that song? The Macarena. I was like, I remember, I remember watching a TikTok or something like that, and people going, people never actually listened to the Macarena English lyrics? And I'm like, or something like that, and I'm like, oh wow, this actually is a whole different song if you listen to it in English.
Wow.
But again, there with shows like Stranger Things or nostalgic shows in general and movies, and people going into like, okay, there's just something that basically springboards either a certain song or a certain movie or a certain idea, a certain movie. Mm-hmm. Or game, really, that just springboard into popular culture again.
Yeah, like if I may, it's I guess when it comes to to films and stuff, like it's a lot more than the song. By the way, the artist name that sings the Kingdom Hearts songs is Utada Hikaru. I love her; she's amazing. But anyways, with movies and stuff, it's like it's not just the song, but it's like perfectly placed almost all the time, and it elevates that story, so it sticks with you longer. Or sometimes the characters actually listening to that song, and it becomes part of them. And when the character is a really good written character, then you'll feel more for it. For example, there's a song called "A Real Hero." I forgot about the artist, but it was in the movie Drive. You guys seen Drive? Yeah. It played during that scene where like they're just having a good day. Like it's the only day where there's character development for Ryan Gosling and God, what's that actress's name?
Carey
Mulligan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her son. They're just having a casual day of hanging out, and that song plays, and it just sticks with you the entire time.
Yeah.
I remember downloading it like right after that. So yeah, there's like music that that you'll just, if it's done right, you'll remember it. Huh?
Downloaded it illegally, I hope.
Oh no, I have Apple Music.
So that's legal.
Yeah, I get my music from a guy.
A guy.
Yeah.
Well, back in the old days, I used to use LimeWire and BitTorrent.
No, but yeah, I think for whatever reason, when there is a big show, a big movie, and they reintroduce a song that hasn't been heard for, say, like maybe 20 years or even a video game for that matter, for like 20, 30 years, or even going far back to like the 50s, Fallout is a great example of that, because they will reintroduce songs that, haven't been heard in rotation for like, say, the 1950s or whatnot, or even if you're on like the oldies station, or what is considered to be the oldies station, where it's just like, okay, they're only playing songs from like the 1940s or 1950s, but I think it just like shows like this or media like this, it just brings back, it just unlocks something that like. A good way to end this episode is basically that scene from Ratatouille, where the food critic is in the restaurant. He's still miserable. He hasn't really had a good day. And then when the Ratatouille finally comes to his table, he finally sticks his fork in there and he eats it. He just has like flashback to his childhood, and I think that's what happens to a lot of these people when they finally hear songs or re-experience songs that they haven't heard in like say 20, 30 years or even 40 years, and just go have that flash of their childhood or their teenagehood, okay,
yeah,
and their or adulthood, and just go, wow, that was like you said before with the song from Drive, where it was like it existed in a perfect moment in their life, and now where it's just like there's just like people are hammering on nostalgia to basically almost like as a weird comfort food nowadays.
Yeah, ironically, since you mentioned Ratatouille too, I think it's a perfect example actually to use. It's my favorite movie. So yeah, it's a good example to use that scene.
Yes, and a good example to the episode. So
Okay.
I hope you all enjoyed this new dynamic of me, Hayden, and myself, and now Darren. So yeah, I hope you all enjoy this new dynamic. I'm not sure how many episodes this will be. It could be a recurring thing. It could be just as recurring as Darren's schedule could be. But by next episode, it could just be me and Hayden back again. It's like, hey, we couldn't do Darren that much anymore. We just had to, make him quit.
If you want to see Darren, drop a comment.
Yeah, we can see what the comments. Let's see what the comments say. Yeah.
But like, I would love to see if one of these comments says, "Who's this guy with Tony Stark glasses?"
Yeah, no. I'm wearing them, just for character. But no, like, so I'm looking at too many screens, so like they have the blue light in them, so I can kind of just like clear my eyes. Yeah.
All right.
And I like the design of the Tony Stark glasses. I just had to have them.
All right, folks. I hope you all had a good episode. I hope our rambling kept you entertained, but also our rambling also kept you informed, because there's a lot of topics that came about in this discussion that made you go, huh, okay, that actually something I haven't actually thought about before. Anyway, take care, folks. Oh my God,
Thank you guys for having me again. I appreciate it. It's really well done here.
Take care, everyone. Please be safe, be well, and peace.
Adios.